All right. Okay. Thank you. Good catch. Already. Anyway, welcome everybody to the Race Prep Week Clinic. This is the first time we've done this clinic. So work with us, and at the end of this, we'll be sending out a survey asking for your feedback about the clinic and how the presentations went and anything we can do to improve the clinic and so forth. But this is a joint venture between Cincinnati Triathlon Club and our good friends at Mojo Tri Club, Mr. Perry Hawk, representing Mojo. Welcome, Perry, and all your members from Mojo. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Mitch Baker, and I'll be responsible for kind of keeping things moving along. We have blocked out 1 hour of time for this, so we want to be respectful of your time. However, if in your feedback you feel we need to go longer, we're always open to those suggestions. Okay. We got 30 minutes of presentations. We have some panel of experts here, which I will introduce shortly. And then at the end, we have 30 minutes set aside for questions and answers. Now, we would ask that we complete all the presentations first, then you can ask your questions at the end, or you can post the questions in the chat, the Zoom chat, and we can then follow up at the end as well, okay? All right, well, first off, we're going to kick off with our coach, Aaron Geiser of CTC. He's going to be speaking about hydration and nutrition. We have Perry is going to be talking about local racing versus travel racing. Maria Kurchik is going to talk about mental preparedness in her car. That's all right. PJ Arling is going to talk about equipment readiness. Don't forget your bike is what I always like to refer to it as. And then we have with us Bruce and Robin Williams. They're going to talk about logistics, because as we all know, that week before the big race, whether it's a local race or a travel race, there's a lot of anxiety and so forth. And we're here to help you with this panel of experts address some of your concerns about that prep week. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and kick it off to our coach, Mr. Aaron Geiser. Aaron, what do you got for us?
All right. As Mitch pointed out, I will be addressing the nutrition and hydration aspect of this presentation. And I really take a very strategic approach for any type of athlete, whether you are a low carb athlete, a high carb athlete, or anything in between. So I take a very, very similar approach to all of these aspects. And with this aspect, it's a matter of timing. When do we want to start hydrating and changing our nutrition slightly leading into race week? How much and how frequent are we going to add those into the diet and throughout the course of the week? And then one of the other pieces that I wanted to finish up with is kind of talking about breakfast. And during this week, it is very important, just like you have put in a training plan, you have probably managed everything that you could possibly manage up to this point. It's very, very important to manage your nutrition and hydration during this week as well, because all that hard work that you put in to succeed on race day can be very, very much dependent upon how you prepare nutritionally and from a hydration standpoint going into that weekend. So for a Saturday race, I recommend that you start the focus of hydration and nutrition on that Tuesday of race week. If it's a Sunday race, we just push it back a day and that focus becomes on Wednesday of that particular race week. Now, when we talk about hydration, I don't mean beer for most of you. I'm going to point out that we want this to be something that's going to not necessarily be a dehydration factor as well. So we're going to look at water and electrolytes. At this point, on that Tuesday or on that Wednesday, what I tend to recommend athletes to start increasing the amount of electrolytes they're taking in. I tend to push up to 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of sodium per day throughout the course of the week, along with at least 2 liters of water per day. Now, the one thing that I want to touch on in that particular case is if you get behind on hydration, it is important that you don't just go grab a 16-ounce bottle of water and guzzle it all in one drink, just because our body tends to be like a dam in that case. It shuts down the dam and just has it run from your mouth through your body out the urinary tract. So that is not a good plan. So you want to make sure that you strategically implement those 2 liters or more in small doses throughout the course of the day. Whether this is new to you or not, almost setting your phone or your watch to remind you to have a drink every 15 or 20 minutes throughout the course of the day is going to set you up positively from the hydration aspect. As far as the nutrition process, I also start to recommend that either Tuesday for a Saturday race or Wednesday for a Sunday race. And in this case, whether you are a low carb athlete, a mid carb athlete, or a high carb athlete, I recommend athletes start to increase their carbohydrate consumption by 50 grams of carbohydrates per day. Now, whether you fall in any one of those categories, this traditionally is going to be an increase, which is going to top off your endogenous or stored glycogen stores. We are able to store up to 2,000 calories of carbohydrates, which means 500 grams of carbohydrates. So our goal through that course of the week is making sure that when we toe that line, our carbohydrate or endogenous carbohydrate stores are topped off. So by increasing by 50 grams per day, you are going to accomplish that task. So one thing that I recommend in this particular case is you are only able to absorb up to 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour. Now, that is a breakdown of 60 grams of glucose, 30 grams of fructose. I don't want you to get too consumed with what carbohydrates you're taking in. So what I often recommend athletes do is consume 45 grams of carbohydrates throughout the course of the day to get to the overall number that would get you to that 50 grams increase of carbohydrates. So
Aaron,
there's
1 minute left, sir.
okay.
Sorry.
So there is no reason to continue to add massive amounts of carbohydrates in one sitting because you're not going to absorb these. So from the standpoint of we've talked about hydration, how much, how frequently, carbohydrates, when and where. The next thing I want to talk about is breakfast. And the last point on that is breakfast race morning is only there to make you satiated. You are not going to add additional carbohydrates that are going to be stored in that process. The only thing that you are going to do if you add high amounts of carbohydrates or sugar is you are going to prevent or suppress your fat oxidation capabilities. So I tend to recommend a starchy carbohydrate from oatmeal or go straight fat or protein in this particular case. I know I'm running out of time, but the last point I want to say is you can consume high doses of sugar and it will negatively affect your race day. So I do not recommend athletes having bowls of applesauce, bananas, or other things of fruit in nature just because it can negatively allow you to tap into energy stores that you have on your body. I am now going to pass it on over to Perry to talk about his topic.
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm actually going to talk about traveling with your bike and so forth. A little bit about me. I've raced a lot of races abroad and all over the country. And I'm also a packaging engineer and I work in the packaging field. So what I tell you is not just kind of from my experience traveling, it's also from my professional experience in packaging. When you travel with your bike, it can get really frustrating because you just signed up for this race or you just, accepted your spot to Worlds or whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden you start looking at the logistics and you think, wow, it's going to be expensive. Tri-bike transport costs, anywhere from $350 all the way up to $900, depending upon the race. Or, you have other options like Amtrak. Believe it or not, they only charge like $15 if you take your bike with them. And Amtrak leaves out of Cincinnati at like 3 in the morning or 1:30, depending upon which way you're going. And there's also bike flights and flying with your bike. So when you're flying with your bike, there are things to keep in mind. Everybody loves a soft-sided case. Not a single airline will actually pay a damage claim on a soft-sided case. It is in their contract for carriage that they exclude soft-sided cases. You might be able to, hound them here and there, and they might give you a couple hundred, but the fast rule is a soft-sided case is a no-go if your bike is damaged. It is 100% buyer beware with that one. So that puts you in a hard shell case. And that's not saying all soft-sided cases are bad. There is one soft-sided case that I use and I would recommend. The others I have just no confidence in, just because they just don't offer any protection. So with that in mind, you need to look at the damages if you do fly. The most the airlines are going to give you is $3,500. Unless you fly American, you can buy more coverage up to $5,000. So now all of a sudden, if you're flying with your bike, what's the fee? Delta and American have actually waived their bicycle fees up to a certain point. If you can get the bike and case packed under 50 pounds, it goes as checked baggage. No questions, it goes as checked baggage. So if you have a ticket that you get two carry-ons, your bike goes as one and your equipment goes as another, and you're happy as a clam. Now Southwest still charges $75 each way. JetBlue is $50, so on and so forth. United, last I looked, was still $150 each way. And there are some airlines that you just should not fly if you can without a bike. And yes, it is 70 pounds in first class. And that does make a difference. When I flew to Panama, I purposely bought a first class ticket because my bags were included, and it was actually cheaper when I started factoring in all the other costs. And plus, it's just a long flight and stuff like that. And anybody that knows me knows I need the leg room. So, yeah. So somebody just chimed in that United's 200. Okay, yeah, that is on their high end, because I have the range for United is 150 to 200. All the numbers that I have in the document I gave Mitch are from 2020. I originally wrote this in 2018, and then I updated it through the years, especially when Delta. One of the things you want to make sure, one, no CO2s, those are hazmat. You can end up on a no bueno list with TSA, and they check. Not very well, because I've gotten CO2s through many times, and I look at it and I say, oh shit. But it is hazmat, and if you're caught with it, your name does go into the record, and if you get flagged a few times, they're gonna come after you, because it is hazmat. And it would be undeclared hazmat, which is even worse for flying. So what you want to do is you want to have a pump. And then if you have a pump, you don't have to buy CO2s when you get there, or you can. It's up to you, but they can't come home. Nice thing about certain pumps like this one is it actually has a gauge on it. So when you pump up your tires, there's a small gauge that you can use to say, I'm at 90 or 100 PSI. And then it fits. It's still kind of large, but it gets the job done when you're racing.
1 minute, Perry.
Okay, there's some other things that you want to have as well. And I have a little goodie bag, some clean wipes, but you have to have a torque wrench. The one I recommend fits really nice and neat in here. It's what's called a torsion. And both of these items, the pump and the torque wrench, are by Lazine. And this one just fits nice and neat, comes in, and it's got the numbers right there. So when you're tightening your bike back up, great. If you're lucky enough to find a local bike shop that'll put it together for you, even better. And that's what I recommend. And that's actually what I did because I was feeling lazy when I did the New York City Tri. I used Bike Flights, flew my bike straight to the bike shop. They had it put together for me. They stored my case. I just took an Uber there, rode my bike back to the Airbnb, did the race, took it back to the bike shop. They sent it back for me all through Bike Flights. I love using Bike Flights for local races. And if you have international races and you're going to be traveling around, I really recommend either flying with your bike, and there's a way around it, and you'll have to email me how to do that. But otherwise, Tri-Bike is a great option for that as well. That's it in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you very much. Next up, Maria, tell us about it.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about race week and how to be mentally prepared, because you could have all of these things checked off and all your checklists, but your head can be your most powerful weapon, and it can also be what destroys you. So the first thing is would say is to just trust your training. Everything that you've done or haven't done, don't get into thinking you need to get into panic training. I didn't swim enough. I need to get in the pool every day. There's a whole lot that you can do that will either hurt you, or there's no fitness gain to race week, but you can lose a whole lot. So trust your schedule, trust your training, what you did, what you didn't do, it's done. And from my experience, there's always something that happens race week, whether it's getting sick or phantom pains, things that didn't hurt for 10 years suddenly now hurt. Usually it's always something. And I try and find peace with whatever that thing is now I know what it is and I can deal with it. So just take a deep breath when something pops up and just settle in, because you can handle it. And then the reason you can't handle it is my second point is to start visualizing now. Visualize race day, visualize race morning, your transitions. I do that when I'm in traffic. Sometimes I'll just think about what a good transition will look like, or what I want my race, how I want it to feel. And your feelings follow your thoughts. So start practicing right now with controlling those thoughts. And instead of wondering like, how am I going to screw this up? How can I mess up? Just thinking, how can I succeed? How can I do this right? And I even prepare myself for worst case scenarios, like my goggle falls off, or I lose the contact in the swim. All of those things, just start trying to think through them, and it'll be a little bit more automatic when something does pop up like that. And that also helps you build some plans to get ready. And then also race week, even if your training seems to be less, I usually find that I am just way more busy for some reason. So I actually schedule time to relax. I schedule time to just sit down and not do much. I schedule time of when I'm going to worry about something. Like I'll actually put in my calendar and be like, you know what, if I'm really worried about something, I'm going to worry about it now. And then I don't have to constantly think about it. So I can keep myself in the headspace that I want to be in. And then also prioritize sleep. Some people get awesome sleep the night before the race. I am not one of them. So I try and make sure that the week leading up that I'm taking care of myself and getting as much sleep as I can during those days, so that I'm not panicked about getting a good night's sleep the day before the race. And then I also reflect on my goals, and I try and keep them more process-based, not like I want to go 23 miles per hour on the bike, because that a lot of things can affect that. So I try and make goals that can be more about smooth execution and how I want things to feel and that sort of thing. Also, what helps when you're worried about something is to talk it out. I find that the things that I'm telling myself, it sounds way worse in my head. And then when I talk it out with someone else, sometimes it doesn't seem so bad. And that can be someone that knows a lot about triathlon. It can be someone that knows nothing. I talk to my husband, and sometimes when I'm, stressing about if the straw in my aero bottle is going to knock off the shield on my aero helmet, when I say it out loud to him, sometimes the look on his face is like, okay, it's not something I need to be worried about. So, you find your person that is good to bounce those things off of. And then come race morning, there's going to be a whole lot going through your head, whether that's good thoughts, negative thoughts. You got to kind of rein those in, because physiologically, your body responds to anxiety and excitement the same. Those are treated kind of the same in your body, but the difference is in how you interpret those. So trying to take that anxiety and kind of turn it into excitement if you're feeling that. And what everybody does race morning is different. Some people want to chit chat and talk and be really social. Some people want to go sit in a corner. Some people want to get this game face on, listen to music. That's personal. And you kind of figure that out as you go. And some races I handle differently than other races. And then I think the most important thing is I like to take a moment of just gratitude race morning, because there's a whole lot that goes on to get you there. All of the training, the travel, just family on board, all of that coming together, like you made it to race morning. And just remind yourself why you're doing that. That kind of helps settle some of those nerves and turn some of that anxiety into excitement. And personally, when I get to a start line of a race, I see that start line as a finish line. And what happens in the race, that sets me forward with what happens next. So it's closing out a chapter when you get to the start line. And like you learned lessons in training, stuff happened along the way. Maybe you had a golf ball size knot show up in your calf race week and you worked through it and you're here, and whatever happens next is just the beginning of your next goal. And if it turns out to be perfect execution, if it's a DNF, if it's a PR, if it's a total disaster, it's just use it as fire to get yourself to your next goal.
Very good.
And,
anything else? Go ahead, Maria. You got a little bit of time.
Oh, I do. I'm over 5 on my watch, but thanks.
Hey. Obviously I am. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going
Any
to say
final
I'm
thoughts?
at 5:15, just so you know.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Next up is PJ. Talk about
All
equipment.
right. Thank you.
Okay, my topic is equipment preparedness, and my objective is to provide you with some tips so you arrive on race day with all the necessary equipment you need to successfully complete your race. I like to plan early, 10 to 14 days ahead. I've got a spot in my basement where I can lay everything out, because I like to visualize not only what I'm bringing and all my equipment, but to make sure I have everything, I visualize race day from the start, before the pre-race activities, to the swim, to the bike, to the run. And pre-race, I try to review what I need in terms of wearing, what types of clothes do I need to wear to transition. Is it a long walk to transition? Is there a long walk after transition closes? Do I need extra pair of old running shoes that maybe I'll dispose of? Oftentimes transition will close, maybe local race, maybe a half hour before the race starts, but a big race, it can be 2 or 3 hours that you're out of transition and you're waiting around. So you may want to look at the weather. You may need some warm clothes, something to protect you from the weather, or even a towel or blanket to sit on if it's going to be an extended period of time. So I just lay that out, what I think I'm going to need for pre-race activities. Then I go to the swim leg and think through everything I'm going to need for the swim leg. Obviously goggles, and I'd always recommend bringing 2 pair, a clear or amber pair, one for low light conditions, and then a darker pair or tinted pair for bright light conditions. And like any of your equipment, you want to test it out before your race. So your goggles, they should be pairs that you've used at least several times during some of your training sessions. So you're sure they fit right, they don't leak, they don't fog up. In most races, you don't know if they're going to be wetsuit legal or not until the day of. So I'll lay out and always bring both a swim skin and a wetsuit. And if it's the first race of the year, I'll make sure, even if I can't get into open water, I'll at least do a couple thousand in a pool with both the swim skin and the wetsuit. And it's not recommended, but I think as long as you rinse it out well, nothing has ever happened. Then that, of course, you're going to need your tri-kit you're going to wear in the swim. So I lay that out. If I'm trailing to a race, I'm going to do some training a day or two before. I'll bring an extra tri-kit or two. So I'll put that out as well. Swim cap, the race will provide it. But if you're going to do a swim acclimation, you want to bring your own swim cap for the day before. Oftentimes that's required. Other swim related equipment, things like Body Glide, put on sunscreen before the race. Talked about one. And a lot of local races don't have bright lights in transition. So you may want to bring your own headlamp if it's going to be dark in transition. Moving on to the bike, like Mitch said, don't forget your bike. And you want to have it in working order. And, either if it's the first race of the year or the end of the year for an A race, you may want to get into the bike shop for a tune-up, but you want to plan that ahead of time. If you have race wheels, get race wheels on maybe the week before so you can get in some training rides, at least one with your training wheels. Make sure your flat kit is set up for your training wheels. Often those are deep dish rims, so you'll need valve extenders or tubes with longer valves. After the last training ride, I always clean my bike and check for any loose bolts, charge up my Di2 batteries, and charge my bike computer. If I'm going to an out-of-town race, I'll take chargers for all that stuff as well. If you're trailing to a race with disc wheel, I'd always recommend bringing a non-disc with you. We just had it in St. Anthony's where the day before they said age groupers, no disc wheel. So people, if that's all you have, you had to scramble around and find something. And the same thing happened in Chicago about 8 years ago, where they said you could not use a disc wheel, and people were scrambling. They were driving 50 miles away to bike shops buying up wheels. Come race morning, they changed it and said you could use a disc wheel. So people ended up buying extra wheels. But, it's on the rare occasion, I would take a non-disc. Also be prepared for inclement weather on the bike. Last two 70.3 World Championships out in St. George, and you think it's going to be warm and sunny. You needed some extra clothes both years. So be prepared for that as well. I think I'm running out of time. For the run, don't forget your shoes. And you want to set those up with lace locks or elastic laces, socks. If you're going to wear socks on the run or the bike, you need those. Hat or a visor, your run belt. And I think I'm out of time, Mitch.
You are, but that's okay. Everybody went over a little bit. Okay.
Another thing on the bike, don't bring your own bike pump unless you're going to rely on your neighbor or the race support. It's just easier, I think, to have your own pump. Air water bottles, your bento box, things like that. Perry mentioned a multi-tool of some type. And despite your best efforts in having all this equipment, all this preparedness, things do happen, but they don't have to ruin your race. You just have to manage through them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
good advice. Thank you.
I'll turn it over to Bruce and Robin for logistics.
Oh.
Yeah, good. Hey, thanks, PJ. Good list.
And by the way, you look like Mark Allen.
I don't know. That's a compliment, but I guess it is.
Well, the last
Thank
section we wanted to cover was all around the pre-race logistics. I know this isn't the real fun, sexy stuff because I think everyone else covered that. This is the stuff that can make your day miserable or your stress level really high as you're going into the race. We have it basically broke it up in 3 different sections, and it's based on timing because timing matters here. Especially if you're doing a complex race that may include international travel. The first section that we have broken out is 3 months or more out from the race. As soon as you enter the race and now you're going for sure, the first thing you want to do is make sure you've got a travel plan put together on flights and rental cars and all the rest of it. Kind of get all that out of the way as quickly as possible. And hotels is another one because accommodations, as you know, around race venues can fill up extremely fast. And you don't want to be shut out, especially if you have a race that is somewhat constrained. And some of the world championships recently have had that become a factor, where you've had people ending up finding accommodations 50 miles from the start of the race. And that's what you have to deal with on race morning. Another one that's important that we put on the list is about passports, particularly in international races. A passport that expires one day after you get back is not going to work. The US government and most foreign governments require a mandatory of 6 months of time of a valid passport before your expiration date. Even though you look like you're well in the clear, it's something, again, that can shut you down and cost you a lot of money at the end where you can't get to your race. As Perry covered around shipping your bike, that's a decision you want to make pretty early in the game, so you can set up all of the requirements on that. Usually it's something you're not going to wait for race week, because you may be put into a corner that you don't know how to get out of, and scrambling, looking for anything that you can do to get your bike there. Obviously, if you're driving and you're thrown in the back of the van or on a bike rack, it's not an issue. But if you're traveling, particularly flying, that's something you want to set up pretty early. And the last one we have 3 or more months out is get a real good feel for the kind of race course that you're going to be on, so that you can start to plan and adjust your training and get climatized to what is the weather going to be like, what's the terrain going to be like, what are the hills going to be like, whether there's going to be restrictions in terms of if you're going to Hawaii thinking you're going to need swimming in your wetsuit, it ain't going to happen. So you better learn how to swim without a wetsuit. Or if you need your disc wheel, it's not going to happen. But if you know you're going to be on a course with a lot of hills, you've got to start putting that into your training plan. If you're going to be hilly run, you don't want to just run flats. You want to get onto uphill and downhill and kind of accommodate your training for the conditions. So I'll turn it over to Robin to cover the next two sections.
Okay, so now we're within a month out. So you've done everything that Bruce just talked about, 3 months out. Now we're a month out. This is a really good time to take a look at that athlete guide. And it depends on the race. I mean, some athlete guides are terrific. They've got the maps, they've got the whole shebang. Take a look at it. There's other options too. Look at, sometimes there's a Facebook page, but I'm not as keen on that, because other athletes start to chime in and then it just becomes this drama fest. Stick to the athlete guide. It's got the information that you need, and then you can take that information as you read it. Create your packing list, and Perry and I think PJ will have another list out there. Everybody packs differently. I am a minimalist. I don't like a lot of crap in my transition. I really don't. It just throws me off. But I've been surrounded by people that just happen to have everything but the kitchen sink. Again, no judgment. It's an individual thing. You've got to bring things that work for you. The race week schedule, that's another thing to look at. So when you get that athlete guide a month out, you'll also get a race week schedule. And typically, these are, even just for our experience, St. Anthony's, it was great to know when you can check in, where to check in. It just had all these details. If you wanted to have the pre-race meeting, there's a pre-race meeting, which is also pretty important, because they give you all the details on there as well. The other thing within a month, and Aaron actually talked about it at the very, very beginning of this meeting, was the on-course nutrition. Get comfortable with what they provide on the course. Everybody's digestive system is different. Some people can take different types of hydration, but kind of just try it out, see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, if what they provide on race day, make sure that you have what you need on your bike or on your person, because that's going to make a big, big difference. So that's kind of 1 month out. And maybe we can tag team this one, Bruce. How much time do we have?
Well, you got about a minute.
All right.
I'm giving it to you. I'm not so draconian. I know.
Drive the bike course. Please do know the bike course. That's huge. If you have a significant other, make sure they know where to park, or you know where to park. Know how long it's going to take you to get to the race. Here's the key: transition area. Know it. Know the ins, know the outs. Don't rely on other athletes. Talk to someone like an official to make sure you know that in and out. You can go back to your athlete guide and it has great maps.
Yeah, so the key one here is when there's 5,000 bikes in the transition area, things look a lot different than when you drop your bike off and you were the only one in the stall. So look for a landmark.
Yeah.
It could be a porta potty, it could be a tree.
Oh, frozen. There you are.
Sorry,
We
you
lost you
froze.
just for a little bit. That's
That was a
okay.
hell of a cliffhanger.
Yeah. You're really good job.
What I was
Go
saying
ahead.
is just practice coming out of the swim into the bike area in the morning of you're setting up so that you know where your bike is.
Very good.
And
Yeah.
I think
Last
that,
point,
and
Robin.
then just,
Yeah.
oh gosh, just have fun. Like just,
Oh no.
Well, that's a good one to end on.
because they changed it. It wasn't a swim, bike, run. It became a run, bike, run. And I don't know, I didn't pay attention to, yeah. I'm obviously not the detail person here.
That's all right.
Uh,
Oh, well, thank you.
anyways, all right.
All right, folks. A lot of great stuff. We got about 20 minutes. And again, I want to be respectful. We went over just a little bit on the presentation. That's okay. A lot of great stuff. But I see, let's see here in the chat, we have Cameron Walsh asked for a list of your packing bags. I think Perry, you provided that.
Yeah.
How do you not overpack for a race? That question was asked. And anybody want to pick that one up? How do you not overpack? Robin, why don't you answer that one for Cameron? How do you not overpack? Well, first off, all the crap you talked about, right? Sorry.
I just, when I'm talking about the transition, I'm actually talking about at my bike.
Yeah.
I really keep it simple. So if you can visualize this, so you have your bike, I just have my shoes and my helmet and my sunglasses ready to go. And then the next thing I have are my running shoes. If I wear socks, my race belt and like a running hat, and that's it. I try and keep things really.
Frozen. Oh, well,
Throws me off.
that's okay.
Hang on. We're freezing. I'm freezing again. Yeah, I was frozen.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Are we still frozen?
No, you're fine. We can hear you
Okay.
now.
Okay.
All right.
Just
Go ahead.
Simple.
All right. Now, next question. Well, first off, let me open it up to questions from the audience, and then we'll get into the chat ones too. But anybody in the audience have a question, come off mute if you wish. And if you'd ask your question and then ask, point out the individual you'd like to answer if you could. Anyone? No? Maybe they're all trying to get off mute. Well, then I guess that means we got to go to Cameron, to everyone. Nutrition on electrolyte. Well, this is going to go to Aaron. Nutrition on electrolytes. Best way to add. Is it salt tabs, natural supplements? Aaron, why don't you take that one?
Two forms I'm going to address. I would salt your food through the course of the week. So therefore, I would typically choose more of a sea salt or coarse kosher salt. And also adding things like Element Noon to your water would be the other way that I would tell you to get to that number that we had discussed earlier of 2,000 milligrams or more. So I would recommend it through salting your food, and typically I recommend Noon or Science and Sport tabs or Element because they just don't have any calories to them.
Can you over electrolyte yourself?
You can, and I mean, typically the body is going to traditionally regulate itself. So if you consume too much hydration or potassium, magnesium, or sodium, the body will still kind of regulate itself and sweat those particular elements out. So yes, but you still can take anything to the extreme, where I'm saying slightly around or north of 2,000 milligrams. If you go into that at 6,000 milligrams, okay, you might be taking a little excess in that case.
I didn't know if this was kind of the same thing of don't pound a 16-ounce bottle of water in 5 minutes, you know, don't like try to spread it. I'm assuming you mean spread it out throughout the day versus.
Technically, the more salt that you drink, the more thirsty you're going to
Right.
be. So probably if you take in too much, it's going to cause you to drink more than what you feel comfortable with. You're going to either bloat up or you're going to be constantly hitting the bathroom. So those would be things that that's kind of why I put that number measurement of 2,000 milligrams.
Okay, that helps. And then my next one was for Perry. How do you decide whether you use tri-flight? Say you're traveling somewhere in the US, how do you weigh those decisions of, do I throw my bike on the back of the car versus ship it there and have someone put it together for me? Like we went to New Zealand, so we had to had to put it in the bike box and ship it. But, how do you weigh it when it's closer, I guess?
Honestly, if you're going to drive, there's no reason not to have the bike with you. If you're going to fly, then you're just going to look at what's going to be most convenient for you. It's not uncommon for a majority of people. Tri-bike transport will work just fine. And, there's a fee to that service and that concierge service, and they do a good job. When they damage a bike, they make it right. And I know that through my sister. So, just be prepared if you're going to use tri-bike that it's going to be gone longer, because they're going to pick it up at the local bike shop and they're going to basically drive it there for you. When you use bike flights, it opens up to a lot more on your schedule. If you get on their website, they have an option of when do you want it there or when are you going to drop it off? And you can have it shipped straight to your hotel, or you can have it shipped straight to a bike shop. Like if you're going to be doing Arizona, you might ship it to the local bike store out there and say, hey, what would you charge me for me to ship my bike there and you to put the pedals on and the handlebars and all that back on and have it race ready? And they may say, $120. And now all of a sudden that gives you good confidence because they know what they're doing. Whereas, when my spouse and I go, I have it shipped to the hotel because I take them apart and put them together all the time. Usually when we travel, tri-bike's not an option. When you go international, except when you go outside of the continental North America, tri-bike tends not to be an option unless it's Worlds or ITU Worlds. So it needs to go on the plane with you. I have a video from when I was in Mar del Plata, bikes that were packed in Scion cases, and the guys literally threw them off of the conveyor belt, one, and then the other just fell off. And people on the plane, you can hear them back on are going, oh my God, and I'm like thinking to myself, this is why I have a hard shell case, or this is why I use a helium case. So they're protected by airbags or by a hard shell case. So have at it. If you're going to be traveling a lot, like you said you went to New Zealand. I know I'm taking a lot of time, but a way around it is you ship the bike there and then you ship it to your final hotel in New Zealand and ask them to store it while you're traveling New Zealand. And then you pick it up and fly home with it. That way you're not having to cart it all around and have a minivan the whole time you're there. So there's kind of little nuanced ways around having to pay exorbitant fees, but just be prepared to take it apart and put it together. And you'd also ask what I put in there. I weigh it as I pack it. And I pack the bike case up to 49 pounds. Hard shell, that might be my helmet and shoes and the bike. And I also have the pump. And in the helium case, God, I can put so much stuff in there. It's ridiculous. It's not even fair to the airline almost, but how much I put in there. But you always have to have your torque wrench. And one of the things I was going to say is you want to have a little hammer. Bike pedals can be a bitch to get off. So the Allen wrench is only so long, and a little hammer, little adjustment tool will help give it that nudge to get off. And, you know, the thing doesn't weigh very much at all. The other thing is just, you know, gloves so you can handle the chain without getting everything messy. And always be cognizant of where you're putting it together and taking it apart. You don't want to get the hotel or Airbnb bedspread all greasy.
Hey, just to add a couple things to add on your points, Perry, because I think they were all valid, is this is when you're booking your flight. If you're going to take your bike with you, I would try to get as direct a flight as you possibly can.
Oh, yeah.
Stopovers are a killer. And I don't know how many people have raced internationally or even domestically where they've had 2 or 3 layovers and their bike ends up in some remote place. So if you can get a direct flight, that is really peace of mind to know that your bike will land at the airport or have at least a better chance of landing at the destination. The second thing is air tags. Put one of those in your bike. Put it in somewhere in the bike case, and you'll probably have more information on your bike than the airlines do. And I've seen people at the counters arguing with the flight people because they'll say, "Oh, my bike is in Chicago," and they'll say, "No, it isn't. It's in Detroit." And I'm sitting here in St. Louis. How did that happen? And the air tag is telling them where the bike is. So it's another great tool. $25. I think you can get four air tags for $100. Great travel investment.
We did that for New Zealand for sure. And so there was a lot of monitoring. And I'm glad you brought up the layovers because that was one of our big things to find the shortest flight because most of them are like 2 or 3 stops. And I was like, no. And then here's another great question. And this is for all of you. When you do travel international, do you guys ever think of maybe not taking your bike and renting a bike at the site? And has that ever been successful for you?
We've only rented a bike for just a pure cycling week. We weren't doing a race.
Okay.
I've had friends that have rented bikes. Didn't really work out for them because the fit was different.
Right.
One friend ended up having some back issues because she was on the bike. Didn't really fit her. So I think I'd be a little, if I was to do a race, I think I'd be a little leery unless you send all that information, you know, all the details of the right fit. But we have rented bikes just on like
more for leisure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it would be easier for them to fit you on a road bike than it will be on a tri bike. I don't know many bike stores that actually rent out tri bikes, fully equipped tri bike. Maybe a few. But I know in some races, they'll actually have a few designated bike rental stores that are willing to jump in and kind of accommodate as best they can. But I've always said most of mine that I'm familiar with are people doing it as a 911 where something happened to their bike, where either got damaged and or missing in action, and they've had to go to a rental as an emergency plan.
Yeah. I think the bike would make it before our luggage. So
too many uncontrollables, and you're going to put a lot of time training on one particular bike, most likely. Are you going to a country where that bike is even shipped or available?
Right.
You're just creating too much of a uncontrollable expectation there.
Right. Okay. We saw a few people doing it with New Zealand, and that surprised me for all the reasons that you guys just said, but
I would lean that they didn't have a great day.
I would leave. They probably didn't have a great day either, but.
The one thing I meant to mention was if you had your bike fit done with Mitch or anybody that does like the Guru Fit or something like that, always have that information available just in case. You can mark your bike, but you know, he puts a little sticker on where your seat post goes. It can fall off, stuff like that. So always have those in a saved folder on your phone or on paper. And also, if it's not actually printed on the bike, you need a list of the torque values of the screws. Because you don't want to over tighten on carbon, obviously, and you don't want to under tighten, especially as well, like on the seat post or your handlebars. So, yeah.
Good.
And
Any,
something,
go ahead,
one-
Robin.
another thing we did because of Abu Dhabi, because we were going to, and you know, obviously a country and just a lot of unknowns for us, take pictures too. You can take pictures of your bike, take pictures of the code on your bike, details like that. If you're traveling, you know, like, because that, and you just have all that information on your phone. Kind of like if you're traveling, if you're on certain meds or whatever, just have it all on your phone, and that just gives you a peace of mind as well.
Very good.
And also you should take a picture, like Robin said, anytime you pack your bike and ship it either bike flights or via the airline, because that is your proof of how it was packed and it was actually a legitimate bicycle before you shipped it.
Yeah.
Chuck, you had a comment here in the section that said bi-wheel stickers doesn't stay on when you have to push your seat post down for packing. Can confirm, right, Chuck?
That is correct.
Oh, well, folks, what other questions do we have from the audience for this panel here? Anything? Oh, Mr. Sean Walsh.
I got a question for you guys. First of all, thank you foremost for all your time. Really appreciate you taking the time to do this today, just for all the members that are here and the ones that'll watch going forward. You know, I'm going to focus this one on Bruce and Robin, and then you, Aaron, as well, because you guys have done international travel when it comes to a variety of different races. What do you recommend, not just when you travel, but then when you get to your location, in terms of acclimating to the local time zone, maybe getting a sense of food you should take, food you should avoid? What are some of the gotchas, get out of jail tricks you guys have that you'd recommend?
Robin and Bruce, you want to tackle that one? And then Aaron?
Probably get on the time zone
Yeah.
first. We try and get to the time zone first, adjust ourselves to that, and hydrate. I mean, I'm just constantly drinking water, it just seems.
Yeah.
Because of the flight.
Yeah, usually we'll take, you know, depending on how many time zones you're crossing, it'll probably take you, the rule of thumb is 1 day per hour is kind of the rule of thumb, but you can accelerate that somewhat. In that you can go a little faster. Obviously, if you're going to Hawaii, that's about a 6-hour time change, I think, from Cincinnati. And so you've got to plan. You're not necessarily going to get there 6 days before race time. That would be ideal, or more.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're there 4 days ahead, you can accelerate that fairly quickly. What we try to do is get on the time zone as fast as we can.
Mhm.
And so again, not try to fall asleep at 2 o'clock in the afternoon of their time zone, but try to stay awake as long as you can to even get to like 6 o'clock in the evening, even though you're pushing your limits, but then settle into their time zone as fast and stay with your diet. I wouldn't try anything really new and radical as much as you may want to experiment with kind of the local cuisine.
Yeah.
Keep things
Kept things
tolerable
simple,
and simple for your diet, your palate. So you're not introducing a whole bunch of new foods or maybe new spices or things that you're going to be just fighting and regretting for weeks on end. Particularly if you get one of those foodborne or waterborne parasites, they
It did
can
happen to us once.
they
did.
can stick around. They can be nasty on race day.
Oh, nasty. Aaron,
Quick note, just stay
Yeah.
away from food.
what's that, Perry?
Stay away from street food until after you race, just
Yep.
because your gut biome isn't ready for it.
Okay.
Yeah. Aaron, you may have a few tidbits.
So based on kind of to talk about the time zone, often I recommend, very similar to, it was pointed out by Robin and Bruce, would be try to extend your awake time to make it to that kind of 8-9 p.m. to take that first sleep. Now, Sean, in your case, going to New Zealand where it's 11:58 right there, we are looking at, and that's AM at this point. What I would do is typically try to cut that in 2 days. So where I would try to maybe go 5 o'clock PM the first day, then try to extend that over to a 9 or 10 o'clock the following day. So just keep yourself up just a little bit later than you might normally do. And in that travel, especially the further that you go, I would just plan an extra day in there just to give you a little bit of opportunity to acclimate. It's just going to make life a little bit easier. So exactly kind of what Robin and Bruce talked about, but just extend yourself. If you go to sleep at 8 o'clock and you wake up at 6 a.m., you're going to feel fantastic the next day, because that's going to be a pretty nice sleep at that case. It's just a matter of trying to extend that out as much as you possibly can. As far as the food, kind of what everybody talked about there, but avoid spice. I have a weakness for spicy food, but I know before a race, it's the worst thing that I should put in my diet, just because it makes things move a little bit differently. So avoid spicy food. 100% keep on the natural side of things. So more of like whole foods, from fruit, whole foods, vegetables. The meat going into a different place, I would more or less stick with what is available to them in that region, because it's going to be more fresh, less processed, and it's probably going to be a little bit easier for your body to digest.
Okay. Folks, we are up at 8 o'clock. I'm sorry. I'm willing, if the panel's willing, is there any more questions out there? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
One thing I will say is,
please,
on nutrition, on race course nutrition, just because an organization partners with a race nutrition does not mean it's healthy.
okay.
So I want to make sure that everybody understands, they pay to be a part of that organization or that race, and then they're giving that product away. So don't assume that that particular nutrition is good. Just say Ironman, Morton. It doesn't mean that that is a healthy snack or a healthy nutrition. Do not consume it outside of racing. So just take the understanding that that is a paid advertisement from a company, and it might not be the best option that's out there.
So when Pop-Tart sponsors a race, you're saying we shouldn't eat the Pop-Tart?
I'm thinking Little Debbie's, what the hell?
I'm like, come on.
My point is being proven by all of these products thrown out there.
Everyone's going to
Super
Chattanooga.
processed.
Yeah, Little Debbie in
Fun.
Chattanooga. I always found that fascinating. All right, folks. I can't say enough thank yous for this panel. Thank you again, everyone. We will be sending out a survey. Please complete it. Tell us what we can do to improve this experience. I want to thank Robin and Bruce, PJ, Aaron, Maria, Perry. Thank you. You and Mojo, bringing Mojo on over. Thank you very much. It's great collaboration. And I appreciate everyone's input, and we look forward to doing this again. But
Happy to be
please
part.
respond to the survey, and thank you all very much. Have a good
Thanks,
evening.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.